This ferret sneaked into a church. Then the priest heard crying. The first time the ferret slipped into St. Mary's Church, Father Thomas Whitfield thought it was a scarf moving by itself. It was 6:15 on a cold Sunday morning in the village of Alderbrook, the quiet hour before the bells, before the choir, before the old wooden pews filled with coughs, whispers, perfume, wool coats, and sleepy children being told to sit still. Frost silvered the grass outside the churchyard. The stained glass windows were still dark from the inside, only faintly touched by the gray light of dawn. In the vestry, the small radiator ticked and complained as it tried to warm the stone building. Father Thomas was lighting candles near the altar when something pale and quick slid beneath the front pew. He froze with the match still in his hand. The church was old, and old churches had residents no one invited. Spiders in corners, mice under floorboards, pigeons that occasionally discovered chimneys, and once a very offended hedgehog that had fallen asleep behind the hymnals. But this was longer than a mouse, lower than a cat, and moving with the confident mischief of a creature that had never once respected architecture. The shape popped out near the aisle, a ferret. It was small and cream-colored with a dark mask across its face, bright black eyes, and a pink nose that twitched furiously. Its little body moved like flowing water. Around its neck was a tiny red collar with a broken tag that caught the candlelight for half a second before it darted toward the communion rail. Father Thomas lowered the match. "Well," he said softly, "you are not on the service sheet." The ferret stopped, stood on its hind legs, and looked at him. Then it vanished behind the lectern. Father Thomas sighed. He was 62, with silver hair, tired knees, and the patient expression of a man who had spent most of his life listening to confessions, complaints, grief, gossip, and the occasional argument about flower arrangements. St. Mary's had been his parish for nearly 18 years. He knew the building in every mood, warm with Easter lilies, frozen on Christmas Eve, echoing in summer when tourists wandered in to admire the medieval roof beams. He had seen a lot in that church, but never a ferret before morning mass. He set the match down and moved slowly toward the lectern. "Come along now. I don't know whose you are, but I'm quite sure you're not meant to be in here." The ferret shot out from behind the lectern, crossed the chancel, and squeezed through the gap beneath the vestry door. Father Thomas closed his eyes. "Of course." He followed. The vestry was small and cluttered, lined with cupboards, old vestments, candle boxes, cleaning supplies, and a wooden desk buried under parish notices. The ferret was not immediately visible. Father Thomas crouched carefully, regretting it at once when his knees objected. "Little one?" A scratching sound came from behind the cupboard where the choir robes were stored. Then a soft clink. The ferret emerged dragging something in its mouth. A baby sock. Tiny, white, with a yellow duck stitched near the ankle. Father Thomas stared. The ferret dropped the sock at his feet. Then it ran back toward the cupboard. For a moment the priest did not move. A sock in a church was not impossible. Parents brought babies. Babies dropped things. Lost items gathered in the church like leaves in a gutter. There was a whole box near the entrance full of gloves, hats, glasses, toys, and one mysterious single shoe no one had ever claimed. But this sock was damp, muddy, and fresh. The ferret returned. This time it dragged a piece of blue fabric. Not clothing exactly. A strip torn from something larger. A blanket, perhaps. It dropped the fabric beside the sock, then looked up at Father Thomas and made a small chattering sound. The sound was anxious, urgent. Father Thomas felt the first cold thread of unease. "What have you found?" he whispered. The ferret ran toward the far corner of the vestry, where an old narrow door led down to the church cellar. The cellar was rarely used now. It had once stored coal and later folding chairs, old Christmas decorations, cracked flower stands, and boxes of parish records no one had courage to sort. The door was supposed to stay latched. Father Thomas noticed at once that it was slightly open. The ferret squeezed through the gap. Father Thomas stepped closer. From behind the door came the faintest sound, At first, he thought it was the ferret rustling among boxes. Then it came again, a cry, small, weak, human. Father Thomas's whole body went still. He pulled the cellar door open. Cold, damp air breathed up from the darkness below. The narrow stone steps descended beneath the church, curving slightly before disappearing into shadow. The light switch, old and temperamental, clicked under his thumb and flickered once, twice, then steadied into a dim yellow glow. The ferret stood halfway down the steps. It looked back, then continued downward. Father Thomas gripped the railing and followed. The crying came again. Clearer now. A baby. His heart began to pound so hard he could hear it in his ears. "Hello?" he called. "Is someone down here?" No answer, only the baby's cry. At the bottom of the stairs, the cellar opened into a low stone-walled room with a brick floor, shelves along one side, and old chairs stacked near the far wall. Dust hung in the cold air. Water dripped somewhere slowly. The smell was damp stone, wax, and old wood. The ferret ran to a cluster of cardboard boxes near the back. Then it disappeared behind them. Father Thomas hurried forward and pushed the first box aside. There, in the narrow gap between the boxes and the wall, lay a baby carrier. Inside it was an infant, a tiny baby wrapped in a blue blanket, face red from crying, little fists clenched, cheeks wet with tears. The child could not have been more than a few months old. A wool cap sat crooked on the baby's head. One foot was bare, the missing sock. For one stunned second, Father Thomas could only stare. Then training, instinct, and humanity returned all at once. "Oh, dear Lord," he whispered, kneeling beside the carrier. "Hello, little one. Hello." The baby cried harder when he touched the blanket, but the sound was strong. That was good. Strong crying meant breathing. Breathing meant time. The ferret climbed onto the edge of the carrier and sniffed the baby's blanket, then looked at Father Thomas as if impatient. "I know," he said, voice shaking. "I know." He checked quickly without lifting the child too much. Cold hands, damp blanket edges, no obvious bleeding. The baby was chilled, frightened, and alone, but alive. Father Thomas pulled out his phone. No signal. The cellar always killed reception. He stood too quickly, nearly losing balance, then grabbed the carrier handle and lifted carefully. The ferret darted around his feet, chattering as if supervising. Father Thomas carried the baby up the stone steps, one slow step at a time, fear tightening around every movement. At the top, he shouted toward the nave, "Margaret!" No answer. The church was still empty. Margaret Ellis, the church warden, usually arrived by 6:30 to unlock the side gate and arrange hymn books. It was now 6:27. Father Thomas carried the baby into the vestry, set the carrier gently on the desk, and called emergency services from the landline. "This is Father Thomas Whitfield at St. Mary's Church in Alderbrook," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I found an infant in the church cellar, alive, cold, crying. I need ambulance and police immediately." The dispatcher's voice sharpened. "Is the baby breathing normally?" "Yes, crying, cold." "Do you know how long the baby has been there?" "No." "Is there anyone else present?" Father Thomas looked down. The ferret had climbed onto the desk and was trying to pull the blue blanket closer around the baby. "There is a ferret," he said. A pause. "A ferret." It led me to the child. Another pause, shorter this time. "Emergency services are on the way. Keep the baby warm, but do not overheat. Do not feed anything. Stay on the line." Father Thomas took off his own heavy wool scarf and tucked it around the outside of the baby's carrier, careful not to cover the face. The baby's cries softened slightly, then rose again in small, furious bursts. That sound, terrible as it was, made him grateful. The ferret sat beside the carrier, watching the door. Its whole body was tense. Then it suddenly leapt down and ran toward the cellar door again. Father Thomas stared. "No!" he whispered. The ferret scratched at the door. A sound came from below, not a baby this time. A thump, then a weak voice. Help. Father Thomas's blood turned to ice. There was someone else in the cellar. He grabbed the landline receiver. There is another person below. I heard a voice from the cellar. I'm going back down. The dispatcher said, Sir, if there may be danger. But Father Thomas was already moving. He left the baby in the vestry, visible from the doorway, and hurried back to the cellar stairs with the ferret ahead of him. His knees protested, his breath caught. The old stone steps seemed steeper than they had moments before. At the bottom, he called again. Who's there? The answer came from behind the stacked chairs. Please. Father Thomas moved boxes and chairs aside with shaking hands. The ferret squeezed through a gap and disappeared. Behind the chairs, partly hidden by a fallen wooden screen, was a young woman. She was lying on the cold floor, curled against the wall, face pale, lips blue, one hand pressed to her side. Her coat was soaked with rain. Her dark hair clung to her face. She looked no older than 20. A bruise shadowed one cheek. Her breathing was shallow. The ferret stood beside her shoulder, pawing at the sleeve. Father Thomas knelt. Can you hear me? The woman's eyes fluttered open. My baby, she whispered. She's upstairs, Father Thomas said quickly. Alive, crying, I found her. The woman closed her eyes and tears slid down her temples. Lily, she breathed. Is that her name? The woman nodded weakly. And yours? Anna. Anna, help is coming. Can you tell me what happened? She tried to speak, but pain twisted her face. Door, she whispered. I heard bells, tried to come in, fell. Father Thomas looked toward the cellar door above, the side entrance. The old church had a small exterior cellar access on the north side, used long ago for coal deliveries. It was supposed to be bolted from inside, but the wood had warped over the years. If someone desperate had found it partly open in the night, they could have entered the cellar without coming through the main church. Anna must have come seeking shelter or help, then collapsed. The baby had been placed in the carrier near the boxes, perhaps to keep her off the cold floor, and the ferret had found them. The ferret with the red collar, the broken tag, the quick, clever eyes. Father Thomas looked at the woman again. Were you alone? Anna's eyes filled with terror. She whispered, He might come. The priest went still. Who? Before she could answer, voices sounded above. Father Thomas? Margaret Ellis had arrived. Then came sirens outside. Police and paramedics entered the church within minutes, though for Father Thomas it felt both immediate and impossibly slow. The baby was taken first, wrapped in warm blankets, checked by paramedics, and carried toward the ambulance. She was cold but responsive, her tiny cries still filling the vestry. Anna was carried carefully from the cellar on a stretcher. She had a fever, severe exhaustion, bruised ribs, and signs of having been out in the cold and rain for hours. The paramedics treated her gently, speaking in calm voices as she kept asking for Lily. Officer Daniel Reeves, the first policeman on scene, pulled Father Thomas aside. You said she was afraid someone might come? Father Thomas nodded, shaken. She said he might come. I don't know who. Officer Reeves's expression hardened. We'll secure the church. Margaret stood near the vestry door, pale and trembling. She was a practical woman in her late 60s who had handled flower rotas, leaking roofs, funeral logistics, and choir politics with equal courage. But the sight of a baby carried from the cellar had undone her. The ferret, she said suddenly. Father Thomas turned. The ferret had vanished. No, he said. Where did it go? A police officer near the back pew called out. Small animal just ran toward the north door. Father Thomas followed as quickly as he could. The ferret was at the side entrance of the church, scratching furiously at the bottom of the old wooden door. Officer Reeves opened it carefully, one hand near his radio. Cold air swept in. The ferret darted outside into the churchyard. It ran across the frost-covered grass, past old gravestones, and stopped near the low stone wall that bordered the lane behind the church. There, caught on a thorn bush, was a strip of fabric from Anna's coat. Beyond the wall, fresh footprints marked the mud, adult, male from the size, heading away from the church. Officer Reeves crouched. Someone was here. The ferret sniffed the ground, then ran along the wall toward the old parish hall. Reeves followed, signaling another officer. Father Thomas stopped at the churchyard gate, breathless. The ferret squeezed behind a stack of wooden pallets beside the parish hall and began chattering loudly. Reeves moved the pallets aside. Behind them was a backpack. Inside were baby formula, a few nappies, a phone with a cracked screen, a folded hospital discharge paper, and a wallet with Anna's ID. There was also a small photograph, Anna holding baby Lily beside a smiling elderly woman. On the back was written, "Mum's Garden before everything." Father Thomas looked at the backpack and felt an ache deep in his chest. Anna had not abandoned her baby. She had been trying to survive. The full story came out slowly, painfully over the next several days. Anna Mercer had grown up in Alderbrook but left at 18. Her mother had died the previous year, leaving Anna with no close family nearby. Lily was born 3 months earlier. The father, a man named Peter Vale, had become increasingly controlling and violent. Anna had tried to leave twice. The second time, she made it as far as a women's shelter in another town, but Peter found her through messages on her phone. The night before she was found in the church, she ran again after an argument turned dangerous. She had taken Lily, a backpack, and a little pet ferret named Jasper. Jasper had belonged to her mother before she died. The ferret was not just a pet. He was the last living piece of the home Anna had lost. In the storm and darkness, Anna tried to reach St. Mary's because she remembered the church from childhood. She remembered her mother saying, "If you ever need help, go where the lights are." But the main doors were locked. Weak, injured, and frightened that Peter might be following, Anna found the old cellar access on the north side and crawled in with Lily and Jasper. She placed Lily in the carrier among the boxes, wrapped her in the blue blanket, and tried to climb back up to find help. Then she collapsed. Jasper, small enough to squeeze through gaps Anna could not, found his way into the church through a crack near the vestry cupboard. He stole the baby sock, then the blanket strip. Then he led Father Thomas below. The church had always taught miracles in stained glass and scripture. That morning, one came wearing a red collar and smelling faintly of damp fur. Anna and Lily survived. Anna needed medical care, rest, and protection. Lily warmed quickly and was declared healthy after observation. Police found Peter Vale 2 towns away later that day after he tried to use Anna's bank card. He was arrested on outstanding domestic violence charges and later charged with assault, coercive control, and child endangerment. The case was difficult, as such cases often are, but Anna was no longer alone inside it. The church became part of her safety net. Margaret organized clothes, baby supplies, and quiet help from parishioners who understood that help should not always arrive with questions. Father Thomas coordinated with a local women's refuge. Officer Reeves connected Anna with victim support services. The village doctor offered follow-up care. A retired solicitor from the congregation helped with paperwork, and Jasper the ferret became famous, not publicly at first. Father Thomas was careful not to expose Anna's identity or story. The official version was simple. A young mother and baby were found in distress at the church after a pet ferret alerted the priest. But even that was enough to make Alderbrook talk. A ferret sneaked into church. The priest heard crying. A baby was found in the cellar, then the mother. By the following Sunday, half the village wanted to meet Jasper. Jasper did not attend Mass. Father Thomas said this was because churches had rules. Margaret said it was because Jasper had already stolen 3 candle wicks and tried to climb into the donation basket during a brief supervised visit. Anna, recovering in a safe place, laughed for the first time in days when she heard that. Weeks later, she returned to St. Mary's with Lily in her arms and Jasper in a secure carrier. It was a weekday afternoon, quiet and golden, light streaming through the stained glass onto the stone floor. Father Thomas met them near the back pew. Anna looked stronger, though still thin. The bruise on her face had faded to yellow. Lily slept peacefully against her chest in a knitted hat someone from the parish had made. Jasper pressed his nose against the carrier door. Father Thomas smiled. "I see our assistant verger has returned." Anna's eyes filled. "I don't know how to thank you." "You don't have to. You found us." "Jasper found you," he said. Anna looked down at the carrier. "He was my mum's. She used to say he was too clever for his own good." "He still is." Anna laughed softly, then cried. Father Thomas sat beside her in the pew. For a while, neither spoke. Then Anna said, "I thought I was going to die down there." Father Thomas closed his eyes. "I thought Lily would be alone." "She wasn't." Anna touched the baby's cheek. "No," she whispered. "She wasn't." The church changed after that morning. The old cellar access was repaired and secured, but Father Thomas insisted the church also create a proper emergency contact point outside, a clearly marked intercom, a night bell connected to the vicarage and local response line, and information for crisis support posted in the porch. "A locked church should not be a locked hope," he said at the parish council meeting, which caused Margaret to cry and the treasurer to approve funds faster than usual. St. Mary's also began working more closely with domestic abuse services, quietly, carefully, without turning people's pain into public charity. They created a small fund for emergency transport, phone cards, baby supplies, and temporary shelter. Volunteers were trained to recognize signs of coercive control and respond safely. Father Thomas spoke one Sunday without naming Anna about refuge. "Sometimes people come to the door at the hour when no one is watching," he said. "We must decide before that hour whether we are the kind of place that can open." In the front pew, Margaret dabbed her eyes. In a safe house miles away, Anna later listened to a recording of the sermon and held Lily close. Jasper remained a challenge. He recovered from the cold night faster than anyone else and returned to his habits with alarming enthusiasm. He stole socks, he hid bottle caps, he crawled into Anna's laundry basket. He once escaped his playpen and was found asleep inside a box of donated baby blankets. Lily adored him as she grew older, laughing whenever he popped his masked face over the edge of her blanket. Anna began rebuilding her life in small steps: a safe flat, counseling, legal protection, mother and baby groups, part-time work at the village library, friends who understood not to ask why she had stayed, only how they could help now that she had left. That was important. People often ask the wrong questions of survivors. Why didn't you leave sooner? Why did you go back? Why didn't you tell someone? Anna learned to answer herself with more kindness than the world often offered, because fear is complicated, because control is isolating, because leaving can be the most dangerous moment, because survival is not always clean or linear. Jasper did not care about any of that. Jasper cared about warm blankets, stolen socks, and Lily's dropped snacks. But in his small, strange way, he had done what many humans failed to do in time. He noticed distress, he acted, he brought someone to the crying. Years passed and Lily grew from the baby in the blue blanket into a curious child with dark curls, bright eyes, and a deep fondness for animals that stole things. She called Jasper Jazz, then Mr. Jazz when she was old enough to invent titles. Anna told her the story gently as she grew, never all at once, never more than a child could hold. "When you were very small," Anna would say, "we needed help, and Jasper found Father Thomas." "Did he pray?" Lily asked once at age 4. Anna smiled. "Not exactly." "Did he steal?" "Yes." Lily nodded seriously. "That sounds like Jasper." Father Thomas remained in their life. He baptized Lily the following spring, with Anna's permission and no pressure. Jasper was not officially invited but escaped his carrier during the reception in the church hall and stole a sandwich from the bishop's plate. The bishop, to his credit, laughed. Margaret said this proved the ferret had poor manners but excellent taste. When Lily was 7, she stood in the churchyard with Father Thomas beside the repaired cellar door. "Was I really down there?" she asked. "Yes," he said. And Jasper came up? Yes. With my sock? With your sock. She looked at the old stones, the door, the church windows. Was I scared? You were loud, Father Thomas said gently. Lily thought about that. Good, he smiled. Very good. Anna stood a few feet away, watching her daughter look at the place where her life had nearly ended before it had begun. For a moment, grief and gratitude twisted together so tightly she could not separate them. Then Lily ran back to her and asked if Jasper could have a birthday party. Life continued. That was the miracle after the miracle. Not the dramatic rescue alone, but the ordinary days that came because of it. Breakfasts, library books, school shoes, ferret-proof locks that never fully worked. Lily losing teeth, Anna laughing without fear in her own kitchen. Jasper growing older, slower, and somehow still capable of stealing socks from closed drawers. When Jasper died at a very old age, Lily was 11. Anna buried him in a sunny corner of their small garden beneath a lavender bush. Father Thomas came. Margaret came. Officer Reeves, now promoted, sent a card. Lily placed one of her baby socks in a tiny box beside him. Not the original, which Anna had kept carefully, but another one from the same set. The marker Lily made read, Jasper. He stole the right sock. Anna cried and laughed at the same time. Years later, Lily would ask for the full story, not the childhood version, the real one. Anna told her when she was old enough to understand danger without being swallowed by it. She told her about fear, running, rain, the locked church door, the cellar, the cold floor, the baby carrier, and Jasper slipping through the gap with a sock in his mouth. She told her about Father Thomas hearing the crying. She told her about the people who helped after. Lily sat very still. Then she said, So he saved both of us? Anna nodded. Yes. And you saved me too. Anna looked down, tears filling her eyes. I tried. Lily moved closer and took her hand. You did. That mattered more than any village story, any plaque, any sermon. The church eventually placed a small carving of a ferret near the children's corner, tucked into the woodwork where only observant people noticed. Father Thomas pretended it had always been there. Margaret said no medieval craftsman had ever carved a ferret wearing a collar. Father Thomas said history was full of surprises. Children loved finding it. Adults who knew the story touched it quietly. Anna never walked past without smiling. On the 10th anniversary of the rescue, St. Mary's held a small service for families seeking safety, healing, and new beginnings. No names were shared, no stories were forced. Candles were lit for those who had escaped, those still trying, and those who had not survived. Anna attended with Lily. After the service, they stood together near the vestry door. Lily looked at the floor. Is that where he came out? Anna nodded. With my sock. Yes. Lily smiled softly. He was a thief. The best one. Father Thomas joined them, older now, leaning more heavily on the pew ends when he walked. You know, he said, I still check under the lectern every Sunday morning. Lily laughed. For ferrets? For messages. Anna looked at him. He smiled gently. They come in many forms. So before we go, remember this. Sometimes help does not arrive with a knock at the front door. Sometimes it slips under a pew before sunrise, steals a baby sock, and refuses to let a tired priest ignore what is hidden below. Jasper the ferret could not speak. He could not call the police. He could not carry a baby from the cellar or explain why a young mother was too weak to climb the stairs. But he could find the crying. He could bring a clue. He could lead someone back to the darkness where help was needed. And because one small ferret sneaked into a church with a muddy baby sock in his mouth, a baby was lifted into warmth, a mother was found before it was too late, and a village learned that refuge must be more than a word carved above a door. Sometimes the smallest messenger carries the most sacred warning.